Hello, Internet. It's Thorn. My hat has ears. And I'm sitting in my car, as is my way. So if you're new to my channel, I had lots of subscribers last week. If you're new, be forewarned that a lot of this is me, slightly disheveled, sitting in my car. So I want to just get in the habit of posting more and turning this into more of a vlog. And I feel like if I can kind of inject a bit of spontaneity into the whole thing and not worry so much about, I don't know, branding, then perhaps this will be a much more satisfying and fruitful experience. So I'm thinking today about what it means to be in community and magical communities. And I'm thinking about all of this because aside from the generalized anxiety that I think a lot of us are feeling right now, it's a really kind way of putting it, the generalized anxiety. I'm thinking about the decline of my own social media experience really broadly and how that may or may not impact me in the coming months. Social media has really been foundational in the last decade plus for meeting other witches, exchanging ideas. If you're isolated and you don't have like a meet space community, feeling like you're connected to a larger movement. As a witchcraft author, it's been absolutely essential. I think people have this idea that like you publish a book and other people just help make that book a success. And no, it's you actually just busting ass on places like Instagram and TikTok. And there's, there's kind of a startling lack of dignity in the whole process. And it's something that a lot of us struggle with, back channel with each other, right? You do all of this effort to like sound smart in a book and put forward ideas. But if you want anybody to read the book, you have to dance on TikTok or something, right? Anyway, that's really unfortunate, but that's the reality of the thing. So stepping back from Instagram, and to be clear, I'm not saying that I didn't completely dismantle my account. I kind of just got sick of it and removed the app, and I don't want to look at it for a while, and I don't know how long that while is going to be, but I'm not here making some kind of official proclamation about my own future relationship with Instagram, just because I don't know what that is. I don't really know how important that is to my brand as an author. I will say that for my personal relationships and my sense of self, I think Instagram is overwhelmingly bad. I don't know. I'm grateful when social media puts my book in front of potential readers who are enthused about it. I'm excited when my ideas, my posts, my videos, whatever, make it out into the world and hopefully do something productive for people who can benefit. But it brings a lot of weirdness into my personal life. It brings a lot of weirdness into my inbox. And it brings a lot of weirdness into my own meet space communities. People are often surprised to learn that I don't particularly enjoy festivals anymore. And I have to, I really came up in my early 20s through my entire adult life going to pagan festivals. And I don't think people always realize that your relationship with those festival communities completely shifts when you step into the role of, oh, I have something to sell you, whether that's a book or a course or whatever. When you step into, you step kind of outside of the general attendee. And this isn't just me being like, oh, I'm so important, I wrote a book. In my last video, John Beckett made a comment. If you know John Beckett's work, he's written several books and he writes for Pathos. But sorry, the laugh was because Pathos makes me nuts. More power to you, John Beckett. I can't get past the ads. Anyway, Godspeed. But John was saying that he definitely had this experience of when he became an author, when his blogs got a lot of traction in the community, he felt like he ended up on this kind of pedestal that was really hard to get off of, and it shifted how people related to him in regular kinds of spheres. And that's something that I've made videos about previously. Several years ago, I made a video about not putting authors and other sorts of really visible magical practitioners on pedestals, and all of that still stands. And I'm not saying that I'm like Taylor Swift or something, right? Like there's a spectrum of pedestals. But having the experience of going to a festival or a gather or some kind of like open event and walking into a space knowing that people were just talking about you, you know, your book or whatever, makes it no longer the same sort of space that somebody who's just like a general attendee gets to enjoy. You know what I mean? I've absolutely had the experience of being at events and later hearing about like, well, Thorn Mooney did this thing and then I'm going to interpret it this way. And it must be like, she must just be a terrible person or what, right? Like you're being scrutinized. Again, I'm not saying I'm Taylor Swift or something, but like you're being looked at. And most of the time it's positive. Most of the time people are excited to interact. They want to talk to you. They want to share ideas. Maybe you're the first point of entry that folks had for magical community, and that's really special and that's really an honor. But all of that is mixed almost equally with, you know, well, who does that person think they are to have said this, right? And it means that pagan events are not like safe, communal, shared spaces for me in the same way that they were when I was 20 and nobody gave a shit who I was. It makes it really different. And I've had to reevaluate those spaces for myself as a practitioner since I started really entering the public eye, first as a Patheos writer and then as an author. And this is all small pond stuff, right? Like which is part of the reason why it can be so difficult is because there's like 13 of us. You know what I mean? Like if you go to pagan festivals across country, it's the same people. It is the same speakers. It is the same attendee. It's the same crowds of people. It's the same ideas. It's the same. So like when something happens at one event, it impacts all of the other events. You know, that's why a lot of authors talk about, and regular festival goers, not just authors, that's why a lot of folks will talk about festivals like they are reunions, is because like when I go to Mystic South or I go to Sacred Space or I haven't been to Pagonicon and Convocation. I will one of these days, but like I can see it's the same folks, right? It's my friends. It's people I want to hang out with. So it feels good to be in those spaces with my friends. But it makes it tricky to get out and meet different people, talk about different ideas, step out of that kind of public eye, right? Last year and the year before, I started going to events just as an attendee. And that was quite startling for people too. I'd show up and they'd be like, oh, are you doing workshops? They're like, nope, I bought a ticket. I'm here like everybody else. I'm here for the party. And that injected a lot of that pleasure back into it, was to remove myself in so much as that was possible from that kind of authorial pedestal that John Beckett was talking about. And I'm wondering how those experiences will shift as maybe I don't have as much of a social media presence. If I'm not on Instagram, if I'm not pushing books really hard, if I'm not doing those things, what does that mean for my place in these wider kinds of pagan communities? Other experiences that I've had, and I've lived in multiple places since I have been kind of in the public pagan eye. So this isn't specific to like any one community, but I've absolutely had the experience of, and I've heard this from other authors and various kinds of prominent witch people. Oh, hair in my mouth. Ew, it's still there. Sorry, excuse me. I've heard this from other folks where when a book comes out or a blog goes viral or something is a hot topic, right? Like the Wild Hunt writes such and such about you or whatever, like, it also shifts how your immediate local community changes, like it treats you and relates to you. I've absolutely had the experience of local shops, for example, not necessarily wanting to host me because I think there's this kind of assumption that if you have an author or some kind of prominent or pagan. Please hear the scare quotes around prominent, because again, we're talking small pond shit. There's like 13 of us, like I said. There's this kind of assumption that, oh, like you're too big somehow for our local thing. So I'm either not going to ask you because I assume you'll say no, or I'm going to make an assumption about like you must have some kind of ego. Like those are things that I've experienced in various towns that I've lived in a couple of different states. I think that there's kind of an aura of suspicion around people who have large names. It's why when you Google like anybody, authors, creators, like when you really dig deep into somebody, you can find some controversy. You can find somebody who doesn't like this person because they're really problematic about this thing, or this one time I was at a festival in 2009 and I saw them do this and they're a bad person and let me tell you about it. Like you can find that stuff for anybody. And it's because of that sort of scrutiny, right? When I go to an event, when I'm doing a book signing, when I'm speaking on a panel or whatever, like there's going to be people on Tumblr or X or whatever who don't like something I said, and that's what's going to be out there, right? It's going to end up on Reddit. I'm going to hear about it later. And I can't tell you how exhausting that is. And it would be one thing if I was Taylor Swift, right? Or one of these other folks who actually like was bigger than their communities. But I'm not making money off of this. I'm not living some luxurious lifestyle on a jet. I'm not, like, none of that stuff applies to pagan writers and witchcraft writers. We're all just regular people, struggling through and in reliance on their own communities too, who want to be in community with other practitioners. So like when that kind of stuff circulates, that's harmful to me in a way that it's not harmful to somebody who actually is some kind of celebrity. Right? Yeah. Anyway, all of this stuff has been on my mind. And the way I'm choosing to reframe this relationship, like with a wider kind of community, and in light of the current political climate, in light of everything that's sort of collapsing on social media right now, is to consciously shift my space, my attention, my focus back into my in-person communities. For me, that primarily means my coven. It also means, the wider pagan community that exists here in my city. Not everybody has the luxury of that. I think it's going to be interesting to watch. Maybe more of the advice will shift to the advice we were giving in the 90s and first decade of the 2000s, where we were telling people how to find pagan community when we couldn't tell them to just go to Witch Talk or something. My first book, Traditional Wicca, there's a chapter about finding groups, and I talk about things like putting messages on the corkboard at the health food store, right? Like that's all stuff we used to do, going to the yoga studio and the coffee shop, right? Getting your tools at the flea market or the thrift store. Like that was the sort of advice that we used to circulate. And I think all of that stuff still stands. I'm not saying that there's like a secret underground community everywhere that you just need to keep diligently searching for, but I do think that the community is bigger and there are more people than we often assume there are. And the reason I think that is because, having lived a bulk of my life on the internet in the last 15 years, I hear all the time from seekers or randos on Reddit or whatever about how there's nobody in my town, like my town, the town I live in specifically. There's nobody here. I can't find anything. And I'm like, really? There's like 4 BTW covens. There's a big pagan networking group. There's an occult bar, right? Like there's actually a ton of stuff. I think it's not so much that people don't know. There's like 3 different metaphysical stores. Like it's kind of weird to get on, and hear things on like Mandragora Magica or Facebook or whatever about how like I can't find anything in, X town in North Carolina. And I'm like, here's a dozen people you could email. But I think that the problem often is that we don't know how to look anymore. We're really dependent on hashtags and on communities. You know, if we can't find the Facebook group that's Tiny Town Pagans or whatever, we assume that there aren't any there. And again, I'm not trying to be like bright-sided and say that there's a secret cabal of witches that you just need to like finagle your way into. Maybe there isn't anything in your town, but there's often more than people realize. And I'm hopeful that we can help each other find those spaces in the coming years. Because I don't know what social media is. Yeah, I don't know what social media is doing. I'm taking this magically as an opportunity to also focus more on my own practice, because the other part of being an author, and I'm not going to speak for other authors, but I will say that something that really impacted me heavily when I started publishing was that the focus really shifted. Even though I really desperately tried not to let it, the focus really shifted into a particular kind of public paganism and public witchcraft that really isn't always in line with the actual witchcraft that I practice. Like the particular kind of witchcraft that I practice, full stop, does not work at a conference with 150 people in the room, right? Like the techniques that I am good at, that I employ in my particular work, and even a lot of the ideologies that I hold in my magical practice, they don't translate to a marketplace. Because books, and this is not me saying that like, you know, books are bad and that like popular books in particular are bad, but like as somebody who has published for larger audiences, I will tell you that palatability and marketability are a thing. You can't just say anything in a book and be expectant that it'll be a bestseller, right? Things have to appeal really widely. And the thing about witchcraft is sometimes the best things about witchcraft are just not palatable or generally appealing. And there's nothing that I can do about that or that I want to do about that. So I think about the best ideas that I have, or the things that I'm really deeply interested in my own magical life in any given movement, in any given moment. And, you know, people will ask me, well, like, what are you going to write your next book about? Or like, maybe you should write a book about this. And I think about the things that really motivate me and move me. And I think that could never be a fucking book. That could never be a book, either because publisher wouldn't want it, or the publisher would want it and it wouldn't sell and it'd be out of print in a year, or I couldn't get the points across in a meaningful way to thousands of people because it works in another context altogether, you know, and maybe that idea is better shared in a coven situation, in a small group scenario, in your most intimate spaces, or just privately, right? Not every thought that I have that like flits through my funny hat clad head needs to be in a book or needs to be a workshop at a big festival. And that's a big check for my own ego, right? But it's also just true. And I think that my hope is that it will, like, reshifting and refocusing and reframing will make my own personal practice more meaningful. I know. Anyway, like I've said a dozen times in the last week, I'm not definitively saying one way or another as far as like the state of my author career, right? Or my life on social media. But social media and being an author have real impact on my relationship with myself, my relationship with my coven, my relationship with my tradition, my relationship with my wider community. And sometimes those effects are not good. And I'm taking this moment in this shitstorm of a political climate to silver lining my way into maybe a healthier practice, maybe something that is more private, more deeper. And more personal and reflective of my own experiences and my own ideas, without thinking about the lens of like, how can this be shared? Or worse, how can this be marketed? Anyway, that's a lot of words, but that is going to be the spirit of this channel, I think, for a while. So we'll take it how it is. I hope you all are well. I'm going to be blogging, right? So some people don't realize I've been blogging for like 20 years. Like back when I had my own AOL homepage and then live journal and all that shit. If you go to thornthewitch.com, there's blogs, there's words, and you can access them if you like. So all that stuff is there. I hope you all are well, and take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.